in the quiet town of Ashwood, nestled between dense forests and rolling hills. There was an old mansion that had stood abandoned for decades. The locals whispered tales of ghosts and curses, warning anyone who dared to venture near. But for Emily, Tom, Sarah, and Jake, 4 college friends with a taste for adventure, it was the perfect spot for a weekend of thrills and chills. Emily, always the fearless leader, proposed the idea of spending a night in the mansion to see if the legends were true. The group, eager for an adrenaline rush, agreed without hesitation. They packed their bags with snacks, flashlights, and a couple of cameras to document their experience. As they approached the mansion on a crisp autumn afternoon, the air grew colder and the sky seemed to darken. The house loomed over them, its windows like empty eyes staring into their souls. The front door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, revealing a grand but decaying foyer. Dust motes danced in the beams of sunlight that managed to penetrate the grime-covered windows. "Welcome to our home for the night," Emily announced with a grin, her voice echoing through the empty halls. They set up camp in what used to be the living room, a large space with a crumbling fireplace and torn wallpaper. The atmosphere was eerie, but they laughed off their nervousness, attributing it to the overactive imaginations of the townsfolk. As night fell, they gathered around a makeshift fire in the fireplace, sharing ghost stories and daring each other to explore the darker corners of the mansion. Tom, the biggest skeptic, scoffed at the idea of ghosts but couldn't help feeling a chill run down his spine when he thought no one was looking. Around midnight, Sarah suggested they split up and investigate different parts of the house together. More footage. Emily and Jake headed upstairs, while Sarah and Tom stayed on the ground floor. Emily and Jake wandered through the dusty corridors, their flashlights flickering as they picked up strange noises. They found themselves in a child's bedroom, filled with old toys and a small bed that looked untouched by time. Emily felt a cold breeze brush past her, and she shivered. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Jake nodded, his eyes wide. "Let's keep moving." Meanwhile, Sarah and Tom explored the kitchen and dining room, finding nothing but broken dishes and rotten furniture. Tom, trying to lighten the mood, made a joke about the state of the place, but Sarah didn't laugh. She had a bad feeling she couldn't shake. Suddenly, they heard a loud crash from the basement. They exchanged worried glances but decided to investigate. The basement door creaked open, revealing a steep staircase leading into darkness. With a deep breath, they descended, their flashlights casting long shadows on the damp walls. At the bottom, they found an old furnace and piles of forgotten junk. But as they turned to leave, the door slammed shut, plunging them into pitch blackness. Sarah screamed, and Tom pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Upstairs, Emily and Jake heard the scream and rushed to find their friends. They reached the basement door and tried to open it, but it seemed locked from the inside. Panic set in as they yelled for Sarah and Tom, their voices echoing through the house. In the basement, Sarah and Tom huddled together, their breaths coming in short gasps. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared in the corner of the room. They turned to see a figure, transparent and ghostly, drifting towards them. Its eyes were hollow, and its mouth opened in a silent scream. Back upstairs, Emily and Jake managed to break down the door, only to find the basement empty. There was no sign of Sarah or Tom. Desperation set in as they searched every corner of the mansion, but their friends had vanished without a trace. As dawn approached, Emily and Jake were exhausted and terrified. They decided to leave and get help. But as they stepped outside, the mansion's door slammed shut behind them. They ran to the car, but it wouldn't start. They were trapped. In the days that followed, the townspeople searched for the missing friends, but found no clues. The mansion remained silent, its secrets hidden within its crumbling walls. Emily and Jake were never seen again, and their disappearance became another dark legend whispered among the locals. Years later, a new group of thrill-seekers arrived in Ashwood, eager to explore the haunted mansion. But as they approached the front door, they heard faint whispers warning them to stay away. Ignoring the warnings, they entered, unaware that they were walking into a trap set by the restless spirits of Emily, Tom, Sarah, and Jake. The cycle of horror continued, as the mansion claimed more victims, feeding off their fear and despair. The friends' tragic fate served as a grim reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and some places are best left undisturbed. In the heart of an ancient, forgotten forest, there lay a village abandoned for over a century. This place, shrouded in mist and mystery, was known as Blackwood. Locals from nearby towns whispered about it, speaking of curses and vanished souls. But to 4 adventurous friends, it was the perfect place for an unforgettable weekend. Max, the leader of the group, had always been drawn to the supernatural. His fascination was shared by his girlfriend, Emily, and their close friends, Jake and Lisa, equipped with camping gear, cameras, and a sense of excitement. They set off one early morning, eager to explore the enigma of Blackwood. Upon arriving, the village seemed almost normal, despite its dilapidated state. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and distant caw of crows. The group decided to set up camp in the village's largest building, a decrepit manor house that once belonged to the village elder. As night fell, they gathered around a campfire inside the mansion's grand hall, telling ghost stories and laughing nervously. But as the hour grew late, a chill seemed to permeate the room, and the fire flickered ominously. Emily, feeling uneasy, suggested they call it a night. They retreated to their sleeping bags, but sleep did not come easily. Strange noises echoed through the manor creaks, whispers, and the distant sound of footsteps. At first, they tried to ignore it, convincing themselves it was the old building settling. But when a loud crash reverberated through the hall, they all sat up, hearts pounding. Max grabbed a flashlight and motioned for everyone to follow. They crept down the long corridors, the beam of light dancing across peeling wallpaper and broken furniture. They found the source of the noise in a small, dusty room. An old mirror had fallen from the wall, shattering into pieces. Yet, in the fractured reflection, they saw something that made their blood run cold. Shadowy figures standing behind them. Turning quickly, they found nothing but darkness. Anxiety hung heavy in the air as they returned to the main hall. They tried to shake off the fear, blaming it on their imaginations and the spooky atmosphere. But deep down, each of them felt an unspoken dread. The next day, they explored the village, discovering remnants of lives once lived. Tattered clothes, rusted tools, and faded photographs. In the village square stood a peculiar statue, a tall figure cloaked in a hood, its face obscured. The inscription read, "To the Keeper of Souls." It sent shivers down their spines. That evening, as they reviewed the footage from their cameras, they saw something inexplicable. In several frames, shadowy apparitions flitted in and out of view, always at the edge of the light. Lisa, the skeptic of the group, insisted it was a trick of the light or a camera glitch. But Jake, whose grandmother had told him many tales of spirits and curses, was less sure. Tension grew as night descended once more. This time, the noises were louder, more insistent. A sense of impending doom filled the air. Emily felt it most strongly, her intuition screaming at her to leave. She voiced her fears, but Max, ever the adventurer, convinced everyone to stay. They decided to sleep in shifts, ensuring someone was always awake to watch for anything unusual. Around midnight, while Jake was on watch, he heard a faint sobbing. He followed the sound to a small room at the end of the hall, where he found an old journal. The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but he could make out the words of the village elder, recounting the day the curse began. It spoke of a ritual gone wrong, a plea for protection that turned into a binding of souls. The village had been doomed ever since, haunted by restless spirits. As Jake read the final entry, a cold hand gripped his shoulder. He spun around, but there was no one there. The journal slipped from his hands as he raced back to the hall, his face pale with fear. He tried to explain what he had read, but before he could finish, the manor was plunged into darkness. The fire extinguished, and their flashlights flickered and died. Panic set in. They huddled together, trying to remain calm. But the air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder than ever. The shadows seemed to move, encircling them. Suddenly, the front door slammed open, and a fierce wind blew through the hall. In the dim moonlight, they saw the hooded figure from the statue standing in the doorway. Max shouted for everyone to run. They bolted through the manor, stumbling over debris, hearts pounding with terror. They burst out into the open air, but the village seemed different. The paths twisted in unfamiliar ways. The trees loomed closer, and the mist thickened. Separated in the chaos, Emily found herself alone, calling out for the others. The whispers grew louder, now forming words. "Join us." She stumbled into the village square, where the statue now stood with its hood thrown back, revealing a ghastly skeletal face. She screamed, but no sound came out. Meanwhile, Max, Jake, and Lisa regrouped near the edge of the village. They could hear Emily's cries but couldn't see her through the thick fog. Max, driven by fear and determination, led them back towards the square. As they approached, they saw Emily standing motionless before the statue. The hooded figure reached out a skeletal hand toward her. Max charged forward, shouting her name. The figure turned its hollow gaze toward him, and the air grew colder still. With a final, desperate effort, he grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her away. The fog began to recede, and the village seemed to shift around them. They ran without looking back, their breaths ragged, until they burst through the forest's edge and found themselves on the road, where their journey had begun. Behind them, Blackwood was hidden once more in the mist, as if it had never existed. Shaken and exhausted, they vowed never to return. The experience left them haunted by nightmares and unanswered questions. What had they disturbed in Blackwood? What ancient force had they awakened? Max, Emily, Jake, and Lisa never spoke of that weekend again, but the fear lingered in their eyes. They knew that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and some places are better left undisturbed. The shadows of Blackwood would remain with them forever, a chilling reminder of the unknown lurking just beyond the edge of reality. In the years that followed, they drifted apart, each dealing with the trauma in their way. Max became a recluse, spending his days researching ancient curses and supernatural phenomena, desperate to find answers. Emily threw herself into her work, trying to forget the horrors she had witnessed. Jake, plagued by nightmares, turned to therapy and spiritual guidance, seeking peace. Lisa, ever the skeptic, struggled to reconcile her rational mind with the inexplicable events she had experienced. But none of them could shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the shadows of Blackwood had followed them home. Occasionally, they would hear whispers in the night or catch glimpses of figures in the corner of their vision. The curse of Blackwood had left its mark, a dark stain on their souls that could never be erased. And so, the story of Blackwood became a legend, a tale whispered among those who dared to seek the unknown. The village remained hidden, its secrets guarded by the mist and the spirits that dwelled within. The fate of the lost souls and the true nature of the curse were mysteries that would never be fully unraveled, lost to the shadows and the passage of time.